Oftentimes when I sit down to read, finally sit down to read, I open up my book and after 10 minutes I feel distracted. Usually the distraction comes from my phone, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one struggling with this. I have come up with some tips and tricks for myself to feel less distracted while reading, and they have been helping me tremendously. So I think they might be able to help you too. I have the feeling that we are becoming more and more impatient. There are so many things going on in our lives. We have our cell phones, we have our computers, we have our television, and this causes so much distraction in our lives. Everything needs to go as fast as possible, and we are already living in a world that is going super fast. We send a text message and the other person receives it immediately. We pick up our phones, we call someone, we send an email, we order something online and we have it delivered the next day into our homes. We push a button and in 30 seconds we have our coffee, and still life is not going fast enough and we are still such impatient creatures, and I feel like it is getting worse and worse. We are getting more impatient by the year. I sometimes wonder if we are losing our ability to focus. Reading a book takes patience, a lot of patience, and your head needs to be empty. You can only concentrate on your book or you are going to miss things that are happening. Now, these are the things that I started doing, and since I've been doing them, I am feeling so much less distracted. First thing, you need to find what is distracting you. So if you're sitting down, you open up a book, how long does it take before you feel distracted? Is it 2 minutes, 10 minutes? And what is it that is distracting you? Is it your phone? Is it the feeling that you want to watch Netflix instead? Or is it something else? Maybe it's your emails that you still need to get to and it's like going on inside of your head and you cannot focus on your book. Figure out what it is and then start thinking about how you can overcome this distraction. My biggest distraction is my phone, and I notice this because every time I pick up a book to read, I feel the urge to check my notifications on Instagram. Instagram is like a big part of the problem. So what did I do to combat this? I started putting my phone not within hand reach. So for example, in another room. The second thing that I did is, like, when you get notifications on Instagram and Facebook, something pops up on your cell phone, and I turned the option off. So I no longer get notifications when someone sends me a text message or anything. I really need to open up my app to check for notifications, and this makes a huge difference because my phone isn't constantly making noises. The second thing that I did, and that you can do too, is set a timer. So you open up the book, you say, okay, I'm at page 50 and I'm gonna start reading. Set a timer. Maybe you want to set a timer for a specific time, maybe 30 minutes of uninterrupted reading or 1 hour of uninterrupted reading. Set a timer, and it gives you kind of this rest, knowing that this timer is going. What I like to do is I like to tab the page that I start reading, and then after a half an hour or an hour, it is so nice to see where you started reading and where you finished reading, and it is so satisfying to see the pages that you've read. Another thing that I started doing is I started tabbing my books. I got myself all kinds of colors and I started looking for nice quotes. I started looking for things that I want to mention in my reviews on my YouTube channel. I mark emotional moments, like anything that you find important, you can mark with a little tab. I noticed that once I start doing this, that I started reading more deeply and that my concentration was a lot higher because I was always looking for something in my novel. I was looking for a beautiful quote. I couldn't miss anything. And so this really gave my concentration a huge boost. The next thing you can do is to start writing about what you read. This also makes you feel more concentrated because Afterwards, you're going to write like a little review for yourself. This doesn't have to be something that you share with the world. It can be very personal. You can keep it for yourself. The thing is, when you write about what you read, you're going to read more deeply. I have been doing this for a long time and it gives me so much pleasure. I do not write book reviews online. I just keep them in my journal, and it is so nice to look back on the little thoughts that I've written down about a book. When you read a lot, it is easier to forget certain passages or certain moments in a book, and when you can just read back on them, it just gives me so much pleasure. So it's certainly something that you can try. Another thing that I started doing, and I started doing this like the past weeks, and it has really completely changed my reading experience. The thing is that I noticed when I started reading that so many things were going on inside of my head, and I started to put a little notebook beside me, and whenever something popped up in my mind, I just took the notebook and I wrote it down. For example, I need to remember to answer this email that I got and I still haven't answered. I write it down in my notebook, answer email. When I get a story idea, I write it down in my notebook. There is so much stuff going on inside of my head when I start reading, and I think that's because I finally have this moment of silence and things are just coming in. Since I've been keeping this little journal beside me, it really changed my reading experience, because at a certain point the voices in my head stopped and nothing was coming, and I could completely focus on the book that I was reading. If you're a bit like me and thoughts are popping up inside your head when you're reading, then this is such a good idea. I highly recommend you trying to keep a journal beside you. It really gives me peace that the ideas that I had while I was reading aren't gone, that I won't forget anything, so I can just close up my book after my reading session and I can go over my list and organize my ideas that popped into my head. The next thing that I would like to recommend, if you're planning to read for several hours, it is really hard to not get distracted during these hours. So build yourself a little moment of distraction. So let's say you give yourself 1 hour of reading and 10 minutes of doing something that you like to do. So let's say you've been reading for 1 hour, give yourself a 10-minute break, browsing something on your phone or looking something up or listening to some music, watching a little YouTube, whatever you would like to do. But give yourself this little bit of distraction and then go on and focus on your book again. The next thing that I've noticed is that I am most concentrated when I'm reading on public transport, which is so weird because there are people around, there are a lot of noises around, even though I put on a headphone. But then I started thinking and I realized that my reading is a habit on the train. So when I'm waiting at the station, I am reading. And when I'm on the train, I am reading. I don't do anything else. And this has become such a stubborn habit. And I do think that that's the reason why I'm in such a high concentration and I'm able to focus so well. Which leads me to the importance of building a reading habit. Let's say you go to bed an hour early and you read. It takes about 3 weeks to build a habit. If you're able to go, let's say, to bed at 9 and read until 10, then this should become a habit and it should become easier and easier to focus. Something else that I find really helpful is to wear headphones. As I said, I read a lot on the train and on public transport, so blocking out the noise is really key, because even if you are not interested in the conversations of other people, you always listen. I don't know why that is, but I cannot block out other people's conversations, and this annoys me so much. So I always put on my headphones when people are talking. Sometimes it's quiet, but usually people are talking, and then I just pop on my headphones and I put on some instrumental music to block all the noises out, and it helps me so much to focus. The final thing that I want to say is what really helps me is to read multiple books at the same time. When I get bored of a certain book, or I am not in the mood for a certain book, because for example it is a very heavy theme and I need to focus a lot, I like to just pick up another book and change it up a bit, because I'm not always in the mood to read the same book all the time. Since I've started doing this, it absolutely changed my life. I read more because I'm always in the mood for something to read. This habit has helped me so much, and maybe it can help you too. Who knows? That's all I wanted to say today. I hope that this was helpful. These are things that work for me. Maybe they do not work for you, maybe they do, but I hope they do. See you guys next time.